Hey everybody, welcome inside the Red Earth Production Studios for another edition of YBMcast with Matt and Brian, powered by Game 7 Baseball. Hey look, if you're looking for a great tournament weekend, check out Game 7 Baseball. You can go to their website, game7baseball.com, register your team, get yourself in a great tournament from Tennessee to Illinois to Missouri, great venues all across these states. And so if you want to test your mettle on a weekend, you can jump into the old AAA major level. You can stay, if you're a AA team, they got great venues there, lots of great competition. Look for game7baseball.com. Get yourself registered, get in a tournament today. Dave and Dave, thanks. Big shout out to you guys. And if you're joining us today and you've not already subscribed, please take a moment. Click the subscribe button, hit the dinger, because that's what we do around here. We hit dingers to get all your notifications, upcoming episodes of YBMcast. And as always on Thursdays, today we have Kevin Mulder with PBR Missouri. Kevin, how you doing?
I'm great, guys. How about yourself?
Good, thanks, Kevin.
I always look good, man.
Always. Not as good as Kevin, but close. Close.
I got to keep the moneymaker working. That's the way it works, bud. That's what we do.
Yeah, Matt and I are the radio guys. You're the TV guy, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Oh, man, we're here to talk some high school baseball as usual. And we want to start off because there was a great tournament over last weekend in the MidMissouri Classic. Some really good baseball. And you were on your way last week. We caught you on your way to Columbia there. So let's start there today.
Sure. Yeah, that was a great tournament over in Columbia and Jeff City. Rain caused a little issues towards the end of the tournament. But the cool thing about that tournament was it was teams from all across the state. So obviously you had your teams in the middle of the state, some KC teams, and some St. Louis area teams. And it's kind of, that you have the rankings or your own opinions on, hey, this is the best team, in the St. Louis area, and the teams kind of play it out, or the Kansas City area or the middle of the state. And this way they got to settle it on the field this past weekend. And it was fun to watch. A lot of good baseball.
So, touching on that event, no surprise, probably to most people, the winner of the tournament, Zumwalt West. We discussed last week they had 3 games in one day, right?
Yes, they had a triple header. A number of teams had triple headers, and it tested teams' depth. That's for sure, because some teams played 5 games in 2 days, and some of the St. Louis teams were coming off of, like CBC, for example, and I know Zumwalt West did as well. They had conference games on Tuesday and Wednesday. So they were throwing their number 1 and number 2, or, guys that were high up on their rotation trying to win those games, and then they're rolling in for this tournament. I know Zumwalt West had a couple players down for the championship game because of like prom activities or something that night. So they showcased their depth, definitely, because I think they played 7 games last week and, did so without some of their guys.
Well, that night I saw their team photo, and I think there was only 12 kids in that picture. So
I saw the photo. I didn't count the kids, but that's high.
There you go. Yeah. But going back to that event, there's, I think, one team that is overlooked in my mind is Hickman.
Yeah.
Because Hickman...
that one, so everyone knows about, Francis Howell and Zumwalt West and Staley and CBC, of course. But, yeah, Columbia Hickman was a team that really impressed me last weekend. Obviously one of the host schools, but they got a good tradition. They do quite a bit of winning over there, and they got one of the best 1-2 punches in the state. Ray Schroeder, a big 6'3" right-hander, who is now going to Northwest Florida Community College. He's a fringy type draft type guy out of high school, in my opinion. But he, low, whippy arm, 3/4 delivery, was 87-90 with a ton of arm side run and sink, and a pretty tight breaking ball, and a good changeup, and super competitive guy. He is going to be a handful, and I know those guys come over here and play in one of the districts, and that's a team I hadn't necessarily thought about, to be honest. And boy, they're going to be tough because they pair him, and they got a kid, 2023 named Braden Hemmer, as well, and he is. They'll use him to close. He's their starting third baseman, and then he starts. They got a very nice team.
Well, they're in District 4, which is loaded because you've got West, Liberty, Wentzville, Timberland, Troy, Holt.
And Troy's hosting that district.
But there's a lot of dudes on the mound in that district. But I think they were overlooked in that event because they made a good run and they lost the finals 1-0. So. Yeah. They're going to be a handful, I think, going down the stretch.
Yeah, because it was Staley that beat West in that first game, right? 5-0.
They did. They had their left-hander Troy Wansing going, who's for my money, probably the best left-hander in the state right now. Heading to Purdue, super academic young man. I've seen 2 of his starts this spring, and each time there's been a strong pro scouting contingency out to see him. And a tall, athletic lefty that's 6'3"-ish, 88-92 with a very good breaking ball and can swing the bat for himself a little bit. Now his future's on the mound. He's going to be a college pitcher and one day probably a pro pitcher of some variety. He got the better of Zumwalt West that day and had a dominating start.
Very good. Who else did we see in that? Hal showed up. How about Rockbridge in there? How was Rockbridge?
Rockbridge is another very strong team in the middle of the state, obviously, and another team that's wins a lot of games and a proud tradition there. Have pumped out a lot of good players. I know they, talking to their coaches, they feel really good about the young guys in their program, but they can win right now. They're in the rankings. They're on that in that listing of the on deck teams. So they're just outside the top 10. But that's a team that can beat anyone on any day. And they had their left-hander going. Peyton Messer, who's also a center fielder and leadoff hitter for him. And he's a 2022 and kind of a low to mid 80s guy right now. I think he's been a little higher than that at times, but has a real feel for pitching. And that's the state of high school baseball, especially in a good tournament like that. I saw Zumwalt West lose, the number 1 team in the state, who ended up winning the tournament, get handled by Staley, to be real honest with you. And then Rockbridge turns around with Peyton Messer and puts it on Staley. And then the third game on that field, Zumwalt West turns around and clubs Rockbridge. So it's, anything can happen game to game. And, that's the exciting thing when you got a tournament of that caliber. If you're not on your A game that particular game, or you run into an arm, you're going to have your hands full that day or that game.
And it boils down to matchups, doesn't it, with pitchers and where are you at in your rotation? And as we've talked about on probably for the 1,000th time now, depth, especially pitching depth at the high school level. Do you have enough depth? And what you're seeing, I think the separators in these types of tournaments is that pitching depth and how do you get through that. West, as you said, they played 7 games that week, and they went 6-1.
Yeah. And I think that's the separator. I think we've talked about that on the show before. To me, that's the deepest team in the state. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to win every single game, and they can be beat, obviously. Staley did it this past weekend. But, boy, yeah, if you're playing a 7-game series, they're going to run, 5, 6, 7 good arms at you in that process. And that's, a lot of teams – not a lot, but – the top teams will be able to run out 1 or 2 good arms and maybe 1 good reliever. But then after that, it gets a little thin. Zumwalt West just keeps coming with them.
Well, speaking of them, the matchup of the week was Francis Howell, Zumwalt West, which was the Wednesday game of the week, right?
Yeah.
West won 7-3. 7-3 final.
7-3.
7-3.
Yep, right there.
What are your thoughts on that one? Because from what I saw in that game was obviously the first inning, a lot of emotions. You come out, West scores a run, everybody's excited. Howell answers, they score a run, and then West tacked on, 5. And they kind of had control of the game until you get to the 6th when Howell kind of scattered a couple runs to make it closer, and then West ended up closing it out.
Yeah, what a great matchup. And, Hal came out with Alex Pipes throwing, and that's a really quality arm. He was 88-91 in the first inning. And then, of course, you had that and Noah matched up versus Noah Hargraves, who's, the thing about Zumwalt West, I love their pitching depth. It doesn't taper off too much. So I don't know who they call their number 1 necessarily, but maybe it's Noah Hargraves, a Jeffco signee, and I'm not trying to speak for their coach. So they got maybe 4 or 5 type number 1s. But you had the 2 of the top arms matched up versus each other, and then you get hit with a rain delay for a minute, and kind of reshuffled things and cooled things off a little bit. And then, Zumwalt West came out, and I think it was Nolan Miller hit a big triple that drove in a couple. And, so it kind of opened things up, and they kind of held control of the ball game throughout after that. But, they're back at it today. And Howell's a team that's also extremely deep and very, very well coached, good team, and it'll be interesting to see how that one goes today as well.
Is it at Howell or West today?
It should be at West.
It should be at West today
because it was at Howell yesterday. Okay, so if you're looking for a good ball game to watch, guys, this afternoon 4:15 for Zumwalt West High School, go watch a good baseball game. Let's do this. Let's back up just a sec. Let's look at the top 10 rankings real quick. And let's line it out here. Number 1, of course, is Fort Zumwalt West. Number 2, Francis Howell. And this is from Monday, folks, but we're bringing this up. And then we go across the state, Kansas City area. Number 3, you got Liberty North. Number 4, Liberty. We're back over into this side of the state with Lafayette and Timberland. Jackson is middle of the state, or is it south?
Down by Cape Girardeau.
Cape Girardeau, okay. So that's a different, whole movement. So you got Jackson at number 7, Parkway West, CBC, Park Hill. Where are we at with Park Hill? Where's Park Hill?
That's Kansas City Ball Club. They have the number 1, probably the number 1 prospect in the state in Carter Jensen, LSU signee, a catcher. They got a potent offense.
Things swinging.
Yes.
So that Park Hill rounds out the top 10 there. And then on deck, you've got Jeff City, Nixa, Blue Springs South, which I want to bring up here real quick because they beat Liberty yesterday 3-2 in a pretty good contest. That's a top 10 contest according to the rankings there. So that was a good ball game. So let's talk a little bit about Blue Springs South, Liberty there, and what we're seeing in that respect.
Sure. The Kansas City's got got a couple good teams, obviously, really strong teams. And Blue Springs South, I had a chance to see them earlier this spring, and they a strong positional player group. Isaiah Frost is on some pro scouting radar for sure. Athletic outfielder, left-handed hitter, toolsy kid, big time runner, strong. He's a Missouri signee. And then they have another Missouri commit, 2002, Jordan Austin, who again is an outfielder and a good runner. Very, very strong team, and again capable of beating anyone. And that Liberty Ball Club's a strong one. I got to see them the first weekend over at Creekside in the opening tournament over in Kansas City, and Liberty, is one of the better teams in the state and has a shortstop heading to Texas A&M. Addison Smith, who's one of the top players, obviously in the state, and so that's a heck of a ball game and a very nice win for Blue Springs South.
Very good.
Going back to I like to look at districts.
Okay,
where we're going to be at,
right?
Districts, because that's when it gets real fun, right? When the districts start, playoffs start, it's do or die. And, we've already mentioned District 4, but, we're talking about the Kansas City side right now. So you look at District 8. And that's kind of what I look at as the Kansas City, St. Louis. Which districts do I think right now are the hardest? I think District 4 on the St. Louis side and District 8 on the Kansas City side with Liberty, Liberty North, Staley, Park Hill. Again, it's matchups. It's who's on the mound.
Well, let's look at this. What about District 5? What do you think about them? Because that's Blue Springs South. I'm not sure.
I'm not sold on that one yet.
You're not sold?
I think District 8, just going into the dudes that are on these rosters.
Because you got Rockbridge and Jeff
8,
City there, too.
I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but I'm looking at District 8 with who is on the rosters that we know.
Yeah.
And what we've seen, and the dudes that are going to be on the mound. I think those two districts are going to be. It's
you think maybe
it's an old
possibly
school,
that's
Ali Frazier slugfest.
I'd agree. That District 8 is stout. I think there's the three toughest are District 8 over in Kansas City, District 4, and there's two actually in St. Louis. There, and I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but the one with Howell, Lafayette, Eureka,
District 3.
3. So 3, 4, and 8. Those are just any one of there's. You could pick a couple of teams that could come out of either one of those, and they're going to have a heck of a chance to be the state champion.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
You're probably, if we're predicting, that's probably where it's going to come from. One of those three districts.
Well, it depends again.
Anybody every day, right? I get it. But if you're just looking at paper, if you're looking at players, as we've been talking about, boom. That's we just said that. I think you're going to look at those districts, right? Because, and here's the other thing, because we're as we're talking about it yesterday, Holt. They just beat up Timberland, 14-2. And that is a huge win for Holt. I didn't see that coming.
High school baseball, man, it is day to day, and out that conference is really strong. So you have an off day, you can get 10 run like Timberland did, and Timberland's been playing really well, and they have mound depth as well. So that's a really nice win for Holt, obviously, and we'll see how they bounce back today. That Timberland ball club.
Because then you had also Lindbergh beat Marquette 11-0, right?
See, Lindbergh's one of the more interesting teams in the state to me. They were in my preseason top 10, and for the first 2 weeks or so, they played like it. They were undefeated. They beat Vianney. they have one of the more talented teams in the state. Shea McGay, catcher, great catch and throw guy who's hitting very well. Mizzou signee, Dane Bourne on the mound, lefty, Mizzou signee. You got Drew Polite there, who's one of the top 2022s. And I'm missing guys. Aaron Moss going to Indiana State, a center fielder, also pitches. They got a very strong team. And I know I just shortchanged them because they are deep. But then they've also had a little bit of a skid in there where they lost like 4 games in a row and kind of lost their way a little bit. But they're more than capable, and that team finds themselves. That could be a very dangerous team in the postseason, certainly.
Do you know if I couldn't find the score? Did Lafayette beat Rockwood Summit yesterday?
They did. Yes,
they did. Okay.
And it's another one. Like Lafayette is about as talented as anyone in the state, and they had their little scuffle last week. But again, it's they're really talented. And I'm sure they're going to be back on track here this week.
The joys of baseball.
That's right. That's right.
And just in the Class 5, want to finish up with this one. Fort Zumwalt South, Fort Zumwalt East. That was a good matchup. South beat them 2-0.
Yeah, kind of an under radar matchup. Zumwalt East has been stacking up some wins. Obviously, they have the big right-hander, Austin Young, on the mound that is one of the better guys, if not the best in the area, certainly in that discussion. And he was on the mound, and Zumwalt South found a way to beat him in a low-scoring ball game in some tough conditions. It was raining, and I was out there for the first part of that one. And, yeah, Zumwalt South has a nice team. And, again, just talking about the depth in that area, and there's a lot of good baseball.
Absolutely. So you're looking, we've talked a lot about Class 6, and of course that's the big time right there. There's a lot of big players, but there is a lot down through even into Class 4 around here. St. Charles West is playing well. St. Charles High is playing well in Class 5. So there's a lot of good teams, a lot of good baseball around the area. So let's finish up today. We got I want to catch up a couple of guys we saw from Zumwalt West. You're aware of this. They had some signees, and they announced it yesterday. And as we were talking earlier, though, you said these kids had been committed for a little while already, though, right?
Yeah, some people are doing their signing periods, just a little bit different celebrating them at their schools. But yeah, Jericho Badwin signing with Central Missouri, left-hander that threw a no-hitter earlier this season. But Jericho, is a nice left-handed pitcher, kind of a mid-'80s guy with a really good breaking ball. He'll be a fun follow up there with the Mules, and that's a good in-state get for those guys. And then Tanner Perry signed with Jeffco, the Vikings, and he's an interesting guy. He leads off and plays shortstop for Zumwalt West, but he's going to Jeffco, my understanding is, as a pitcher. Of course, his dad is Pat Perry, the former Cardinal, and super competitive kid. I have seen him into the low 90s. And I've also seen him kind of in the mid 80s. It's the tricky thing. He's that shortstop and he's playing hard and all that. So it kind of depends on when you see him and what he's been doing on the field. He gets worn down a little bit, but that's a really quality arm. I'm looking forward to watching him when he goes to junior college to see how he does on the mound when he's focused on just being a pitcher. But he's a big – those two are huge pieces for that Zumwalt West juggernaut for sure.
What do you have coming up this week to round out the week, big matchups that you'll be out watching?
I'm a little worried about the weather at the end of the week. I know there's some rain on the way. I'm obviously, like everyone, excited about the Howell Zumwalt West matchup today. That's where I'll have a lot of my attention, see that one. And, we'll see about the rest of the week with the rain moving in Friday and Saturday. We'll see if we're able to get anything in.
Oh, you know what? I'd be remiss. We talked about this earlier. I know we don't. We put so much time in these things and whatnot. And we'll probably try and get into the southwest side of the state next time around.
The number one team in the small schools, Springfield Catholic. Extremely strong team. A couple Division I signees / commits. And that's a team, I'm a huge fan of the teams here, but Kickapoo, Willard, Nixa, there are some very strong teams in that neck of the woods in Missouri for sure.
Well, hopefully the weather stays good enough to get some games in, because you get CBC and Jackson are playing a doubleheader on Saturday. So that's another good one to keep an eye on. Just looking outside of the typical St. Louis and Kansas City area, but even in town, you've got Troy, Liberty, Wentzville, and there's a good matchup. So there's games throughout the area, throughout the state. So hopefully the weather's good enough to get out and watch some good baseball.
Absolutely.
It'll hang in for today, so we'll work on that one.
The 1-2 rematch.
Yeah. So, Kevin, always, man, great information, great stuff. We appreciate it very much.
Great talking ball with you guys, and looking forward to it next week.
Absolutely. Hey, guys, remember, you want to hit that subscribe button. We'll keep up to date on this. We got signees, we got high school baseball. We're rolling into districts right now. We got 4 weeks left, I think it is, Kevin?
Right? That sounds about right.
Yeah.
3-4 weeks.
So the closer we get, we're going to be talking about district champs, looking at some of those things, and it's going to be a lot of fun as we close into, I think the state's going to be a lot of fun to watch up and down, as he mentioned, even in the lower class ranks, and we'll get into some of that as we move along. So hit that subscribe button, hit the dinger, get your notifications. We appreciate you guys supporting and watching the show. And remember, all you pitchers, keep throwing strikes, and you hitters,
hit them where they ain't.
That's good advice. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Kevin.